this meeting to order. Have a roll call.
Elam.
Here.
Farrell. Keach.
Yes.
Neff.
Here.
Fick.
Here.
Ritterbush.
Here.
Smock.
Here.
Westlake.
Here.
Zobrist.
Okay, so next on the agenda is approval of the minutes on the November meeting. Does anyone have a comment about the meeting minutes at all? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept them.
So moved.
Second. And a second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Passed.
Okay, so tonight we have a public hearing and some other business, so we're going to start with the public hearings, and we're going to let Pat Graff, our attorney, give us a lesson on hearings.
Thank you. Public hearings are being held tonight pursuant to published notice. Any person wishing to make a comment to the Plan Commission will be afforded an opportunity to do so and will give their testimony under oath or affirmation. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Plan Commission will make a recommendation to the Village Board. The Plan Commission makes recommendations only. The Village Board is responsible for taking final action on these matters.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is petition for annexation, Oaklawn Mobile Estates. We've got a package of information here. Is there anyone from Oaklawn who would like to make a comment? Stand and be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So state your name and
Hello, I'm Jim Benkendorf. I'm the attorney for the petitioner for Oaklawn Mobile Real Estate LLC. And tonight, just looking at actually dealing with an annexation of a 1-acre tract for the property. And as you see in the documentation that you have right now, it is a situation where with Oaklawn, it is currently a matter of they have the mobile home park. This proposed lot that is to be annexed is a part of the farm that they have, which is a separate tract of real estate. The piece with that, roughly the 1-acre piece, actually has a couple of small buildings on it that are actually used by the park right now. It is something that we're in the process of actually selling, Oaklawn Mobile Estates, and this 1-acre piece will be sold with the park. The rest of the farm that is there as far as the farm ground is not going to be sold. Therefore, we are going to go ahead and annex this piece because the rest of the park is actually already annexed in. And so we're just adding this to the rest of the parcel so that with the entire mobile home park, it will be sold with that 1-acre piece. And so that's the whole aspect of it, is just carving it out so that we're not selling the farm ground, but we are selling the rest of the park with this 1 acre. So if there's any other questions or anything, I'd be more than happy to answer any.
anybody have any questions?
Does it come in zone agricultural then, or do you know how that?
This property is
Correct.
not in the, it's in the county and it's zoned ag, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Yeah, and so that it'll go ahead and come in as the ag zoning with the use under the mobile home park provisions.
If there are no other questions, thank you very much. Is there anybody from the public who would like to make a comment about this annexation, petition for annexation? If not, we'll just entertain any discussion now in the board. If anybody has anything they'd like to discuss. If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the annexation.
Motion
I'll second.
and a second. And a vote?
Keach.
Yes?
Neff.
Yes.
Fick.
Yes.
Ritterbush.
Yes.
Smock.
Yes.
Westlake.
Yes.
Elam.
Yes.
Approved.
Okay, public hearing number 2, or item number 2, an ordinance making amendments regarding solar energy systems to Chapter 4 of Title 10 of the Morton Municipal Code. Roger, do you have some comments about this?
I think Pat does.
Pat does, okay.
This is an ordinance that I've worked with staff on for some time. We've seen at least interest in the development of large-scale commercial solar energy systems. I'm sure you may or may not have read about some. Fond du Lac, around one of their cemeteries, just did one. So with an increased interest in solar energy systems, on consultation between Roger and myself and Craig Loudermilk, we felt that this is an area where we need additional regulation in our zoning code. The proposed regulations essentially address a few different types of solar energy systems. One would be building integrated systems. Second would be community solar gardens. Another would be a commercial or large-scale solar farm. And the last would be a ground-mount solar energy system. So that would range from anything to roof-mounted panels to freestanding panels on the same parcel that serve that parcel to a 20-acre site that's just going to be solar panels. Our regulations are designed to address some of the development concerns. They're patterned somewhat off what Tazewell County's adopted. They address things like adverse effects to neighboring structures, setbacks, reflection angles, visibility, safety, issues of that nature. The other kind of zoning issue is where we felt that these may be appropriate from a zoning perspective, and the ordinance proposes that these solar systems from the building integrated all the way up to a commercial or large-scale solar farm would be special uses, so that they'd have to come before you. The idea being that there probably isn't any zoning district in a village where these would be appropriate in every instance, and so by preserving the special use classification, they end up coming back before you for hearing, and so you can impose any special restrictions as you may deem prudent to prevent adverse effects to neighboring properties. So that's kind of the sum and substance of the ordinance. There is one change in further discussions with Roger. The commercial or large-scale solar farm, the draft proposed it'd be permitted in I-1, I-2, B2, or B3. The more we've discussed that, the more we felt it may be more appropriate to limit that to a I-2 setting. So that's one staff suggested amendment to the ordinance for your consideration. Happy to answer any questions you have on it.
I have one question. What if a neighboring property owner would build a building or plant landscaping that would actually shade or block the sun on somebody's pre-existing solar panel? But they would be following all the local ordinances, but they could be blocking that person's panel. Is that true?
Yeah, there's a concept called a solar access easement, which essentially is descriptive of an easement allowing a pathway of light. Those aren't created by default on the installation of a solar system. So if you put a solar system in place, absent having that contractual agreement with the neighboring property owner and selecting the site and layout of the system, that's your peril.
That's your risk.
In doing so, and in fact, I've seen instances I'm aware of where that exact thing has happened. People have planted screening to screen solar panels, and it served to obstruct the light flowing through. And there is not, in my opinion, absent knowing more facts about an individual circumstance, generally there isn't much recourse. The person who has a panel that's there, they don't have a legally protected right to flow natural light across neighboring properties.
But they might seek an easement before they develop it, perhaps, huh?
Yes.
And then the easement goes with the sale of the property too.
It can, depending on how it's set up. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay.
Among the zoning areas you mentioned, you didn't mention agriculture.
We were, I-2 for the large-scale solar farms was what we had in mind. I was looking at page 5, paragraph F. Certainly, it's your guys' prerogative, you know, as where and as you see fit to make recommendations. So if agriculturally zoned areas seem appropriate to the Plan Commission, that can be included in your recommendation.
Is there a reason why they were left off of this recommendation?
I don't recall any specific discussion regarding that issue one way or another. I think the I-2 in discussion, I don't recall, Roger, you might.
I think when we looked at our zoning map, we obviously don't want those just anywhere. And truthfully, the only places that we thought that it would work was on 98 to the west, and maybe could be a little north of 98, but more to the south. Nothing north of Interstate 74 that we currently have that's incorporated into the village limits. Nothing to the south. And then we already know of a possibility that someone's looking to do something, but it's in Tazewell County, but it touches the village of Morton. So we wanted to have a little bit in here to say that wouldn't be approved if it were in Morton. So that would be our response to Tazewell County if that comes to be. That was our take on it.
Because I think we have had agricultural property that's been solicited for this within the village limits.
Yeah, that could be. That's just our opinion. That doesn't make us right either.
Is there a notion that we should be saving our agricultural land for agriculture? Is that?
Some of the specific parcels I recall looking at with Roger that were zoned agricultural, the concerns that we discussed were whether those parcels wouldn't be better suited in the long-term planning of the village to be available for residential development. Some of the parcels were ones that almost, you know, had dead-end streets from existing residential developments, or had very logical extensions of residential development presented by them. So that that was another basis or concern we had looking at some agriculturally zoned land.
And these are typically from, not that I know that much about them, but what I do know, it's not a short term, it's like 15, 20 years.
Commitment, yeah.
So do you want to lock up whatever that ground is for 20 years?
Several of them go, some of the ones I've seen go 40 plus years.
Yeah,
So,
and that's a long time.
And it looks like you're making sure that there's a way to remove the panels when they've reached the end of their useful life, right? I mean, if there's a financial, either a bond or a
yes.
escrow account
Yep.
for demolition. Okay.
And that's, Tazewell County has followed that practice. They had a similar provision when wind farms were popularized. They've adopted a similar restriction in unincorporated portion of the county. It seemed logical. And also, we didn't necessarily want the development bar to be lower in Morton in terms of the protection for landlords than it was in unincorporated Tazewell County. So a fair bit of that language especially is borrowed from county's ordinance.
Any other discussion? Is there any discussion from the public? Sure. You're gonna need to, I think you need to come up and officially be greeted into our meeting.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, thank you.
My question is on...
What's your name?
I'm sorry. My name's Al Kaiser with Kaiser Electric. My question is, the solar panels that would be placed on roofs, can they face any direction? In other words, the street is my main question.
I have the ordinance, bear with me and I will answer that directly.
think they have to face south, don't they?
That's what I read.
In paragraph C, it mentions under number 1, under height, it says ground-mounted solar energy systems may not be placed in the front yard, but I'm not certain about the
Ground, right?
rooftop or the roof-mounted.
Well, I think if I remember what the ordinance says is that it doesn't say that you can't face them toward the street if it's on the roof. It says that you can't, the solar panel counts as the building in terms of building height, right?
Yes.
So,
It prohibits reflection angles from being orientated to project glare onto adjacent properties. It would require for roof mount systems that they not extend beyond the exterior perimeter of the building. But there is not presently included a specific restriction against them being on the front side of the building, or being, on a roof plane.
Okay. So I would expect that it would pass, the variance would pass if somebody wanted to put it on the front of their house facing the street? Is that a legal question?
Well, in terms of the, it'd be a special use, and in terms of predictability of any individual case, every case evaluated on the merits of its individual circumstance. But an individual applying for a solar panel or a solar system facing the front wouldn't be disqualified or wouldn't be ineligible because they want to place it on the front. They'd have the same, the playing field would be the same for them as any other very special use request before this board.
All right, thanks.
anyone else from the public? Do we ask for like a glare study? You know, because I thought about that too, when, before I read that you said they can't produce a glare. I mean, is there something in there where we request them to actually predict where the reflection is going to hit?
We have the provision you just cited. I'm going to the site plan requirements. Bear with me here.
That was in, on that same page, Pat, item 3, reflection angles.
Yeah, I'm not finding in our application or site plan requirements that they have some sort of scientific study done or analysis done of the projected reflection angles.
Somebody has to do that in order to make sure that they meet that. So either the petitioner would need to do that, or the city needs to do that.
I think that's old language, and I don't think new solar panels create glare.
I didn't hear you, Al.
The new solar panels don't create any glare.
Oh, they don't? Well, that would.
And in the not too distant future, they're gonna look like shingles. If you could afford it.
Yeah.
Under setbacks, item C, we have the last sentence in there refers to solar hot water systems. Should that be deleted for this, since it really pertains to electric voltaic systems?
I'm trying to place where you are. Well,
Under
Third page.
permitted ground-mounted roof, SEC, under height, and then under setbacks down below that, item C,
C2C.
the last sentence. I mean, we've had solar systems in the past within the village limits. I mean, it's been like 40 years ago before the energy companies bought them all out. they were using, hot water systems back then, but that wouldn't pertain to this ordinance, would it?
Yeah, we can,
Because it has nothing to do with electricity.
that would be something, if that's your recommendation, we can certainly remove that.
It'd either be eliminating that or increasing the scope of this one to cover hot water systems, which I don't think would be appropriate at this time, at least. I would suggest just eliminating that sentence.
We have defined solar thermal systems. Solar thermal systems directly heat water, other liquid using sunlight, used for purposes like space heating, cooling, domestic hot water, and heating pool power. And then the term solar energy systems is defined to include solar thermal systems. So that would be the instance in which, the only instance in which the terms of the ordinance would involve hot water, but the phrasing of that sentence, or hot water systems, might be more appropriate to either delete that sentence or refer to the solar thermal systems, which is a defined term.
Right.
Any other comments? Okay, so is there did I hear another comment? No? Is there a motion that anyone would like to make? I suppose the motion would include making that last comment about the solar thermal systems. It might include that we delete the B2 and B3
And I1 in paragraph F on page 5.
and I1. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
I agree with eliminating the B2, B3, and the I1 if the village wants to guide it in a certain direction. I believe that's
Okay.
the right move for them,
Are you making the motion?
I guess. So I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance with the amendment to eliminate the B2, B3, and I1, and to remove reference to solar thermal systems, and same under setbacks.
So we're removing reference to hot water systems, right? We're keeping solar thermal systems, correct, Pat?
Yes, I think the phrase solar hot water systems used in the last sentence of, my suggestion is that we clean up the phrasing there in C2C on page 3, and particularly the phrase solar hot water systems, to comport with the other definitions of the ordinance. So it'd be my intent to substitute solar thermal systems.
Does that meet your approval, Matt?
Yes.
Matt? Sorry.
Before we vote on that, I apologize, I should have asked this question back when I was talking about the agricultural zoning areas. Does this extend beyond the village borders in terms of its, within a mile of the village? Would this pertain to something outside the village?
We, within a mile and a half of the village's boundaries,
Yeah.
in unincorporated Tazewell County, we are contacted to provide comment, but the ordinance doesn't apply. It's not as if someone would be prohibited because of our ordinance from doing something outside the village limits. But because we have a comprehensive plan adopted, the county would contact us in those cases and ask for feedback, which Roger would provide based on directions of the village board.
Okay, thank you, I apologize.
You're fine.
So we have a motion. Is there a second?
You might want to.
I'll second the motion.
First and second. Let's vote.
Neff,
Yes.
Stick,
Yes.
Ritterbusch,
Yes.
Smock,
Yes?
Westlake,
Yes.
Elam,
Yes.
Keach,
Yes.
Ruth.
Okay, so Third item on the public hearing, an ordinance making amendments regarding murals to section 10-9-8 of chapter 9 of title 10 of the Morton Municipal Code. And so this was something that we had at our last meeting, and then we continued to this meeting. And is there any additional information?
Roger and I met to discuss the murals matter after the last ordinance. You guys had asked for some more information. In further discussions at least our level, Roger, and I don't want to speak for Roger, but I believe strongly we're in like mind here. Our feeling at this point in time is, in light of the numerous very valid concerns raised during your last meeting, that this may be one where you give a negative recommendation at this time, because you don't have people beating down the door to put one of these up. You have a lot of very valid concerns about how the regulatory system would work. So instead of adopting dicey regulations to provide for something that people aren't demanding, our thoughts are that the recommendation today is not would be in the negative. So a motion and a second to recommend approval, and you'd all vote no, and then we'd put this thing to sleep for a while. So certainly if demand surfaced, it can always come back before you for further consideration. Negative recommendation today doesn't preclude action later, but
So we actually have to have a motion to approve it, and then I'll say no.
you could make a motion for a negative recommendation. Customarily, when cases come before you for public hearing, even like in a case of a special use, if you're not going to recommend approval, usually you do that by moving to approve it and then everybody voting no. But I'm equally okay with the motion being to recommend against approval and everybody voting yes.
So that's better than kicking the can down the road, sort of saying we'll talk about this later. You just take it, basically get it off the agenda.
Yep.
That's your feeling.
If this is something we hadn't published a public hearing on, it may have been something that we just took off the agenda, but in light of the fact that we did publish a public hearing seeking your recommendation, I think it's appropriate to procedurally see
Yeah.
that process through.
Any comments about this discussion?
So is someone going to make a motion and vote against it?
I will say this, I remember
seems
we had a very long meeting last time about this ordinance, and there was not really much agreement about the wording of this ordinance.
I thought about it quite a bit since the last meeting, and I feel like there's just a lot of risk there that I don't necessarily feel comfortable taking, especially if, as Pat's saying, there's not a bunch of people coming and saying they want this at this moment.
File my application when I repaint my buildings. Main Street in Jefferson, we're gonna have a nice big mural.
I will make a motion to not approve this ordinance.
We have a motion on the table.
I'll second.
Don will second it. Any further discussion? If not, let's
Fair.
have a vote.
So a yes vote.
Now you need to
I know,
say
Yes vote is to
Okay,
deny.
yes.
Yes means no.
Ritterbusch.
Yes.
Smock.
Yes.
Westlake.
Yes.
Elam.
yes.
Keach.
Yes.
Net.
Yes.
Approved.
Sorry, I just wanted my vote to match my motion.
Okay, this closes the public hearing part of the meeting. Now we'll go on to other business. We have the Sarah Grimm subdivision preliminary and final plats.
We have a final plat. There was just a variance granted for this property at the zoning board of appeals meeting that preceded this meeting tonight. And what you have before you is a preliminary and final plat. so that these properties may be sold. The village has gone through it, and we're okay with everything that's being presented to you here.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Spengler? If not, I would entertain a motion. We go for a motion on this, yeah. So we need a motion
I'll
to
make a
approve.
motion that we approve the preliminary and final plats.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
And we have a second. Call the vote.
Ritterbusch,
Yes.
Smock,
Yes.
Westlake,
Yes.
Elam,
Yes.
Keach,
Yes.
Net,
Yes.
Fick.
Yes.
Approved.
And then the second item on other business, the Corey subdivision preliminary and final plats.
Very much the same scenario. They will be platting off this small parcel out of the farm to create a housing site. And on the village's side, we're good with what they're presenting.
Okay. Comments and questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a second. Let's vote.
Smock,
Yes.
Westlake,
Yes.
Elam,
Yes.
Keach,
Yes.
Net,
Yes.
Fick,
Yes.
Ritterbusch.
Yes.
Approved.
Item 5 on the agenda. Roger, do you have any comments for us tonight?
Nothing additional.
Okay. We have this packet placed before us. This is just revisions to the
Inserts to your book.
booklet. Okay.
Those are all things that would have gone through, that you would have approved,
Okay.
recommended, so.
All right. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.